This is the Audacity Show. I am your host, Mia Dunlap. This show is bringing you stories from young people who are under 30 and living their lives with audacity. This is the Audacity Show. I am your host, Mia Dunlap. I'm so excited to introduce you to someone who's very, very special. He's a junior at Morehouse College, and he started an organization called New Deal Democrat to making communities stronger than they were before. Julian, welcome. You're a junior at Morehouse College.
Yeah.
What are you up to?
So currently, as you said before in your intro, I'm creating a group called the New Deal Democrats. We've been around for 3 months, and we went from one member, which was me, to 77. And we've been organizing around the West End, and we've been doing like turkey drives, canned food drives, and we've also been working with the rapper Killer Mike and the Jack and Jill organization.
Wow.
In order to get out greater voter turnout. And then we brought 100 high school students on campus talking about why it's important to get involved in our democracy. And
Why is it important?
democracy doesn't just happen. It works for you when you're able to put yourself in the situation. It's a very active sport. A lot of us like to be commentators or spectators in it, but when we play that role, it ends up being a situation where people that do not look like us or do not think about us or do not speak in our language define our laws. And when there's a lack of communication, a lack of being heard, then what happens is Social Security is cut. What happens is there's gentrification in our neighborhoods, and we're sent out to the outskirts of our communities. Another thing that occurs is that we have young Black and brown brothers and sisters being put in jail. So we have to recognize that it's important because it's a life or death situation many of the times.
So what do you hope to achieve?
Well, it's different, right? It changes based on the community that I'm in. It's all about, one, making sure that I am not imposing my own beliefs on anyone, but listening to the concerns of other people and then representing their issues. So it's not about what I hope to achieve. In a very general sense, it's about how do we create justice? How do we define justice? How do we look at justice? And justice is not a meta-narrative, but it's a place of little narratives that come together and culminate to acquire what people need at that particular moment.
So you're in the West End now.
Yeah.
You're from the Bronx.
Yeah.
You're at Morehouse College.
Yeah.
What does all this mean to you?
So when I was 15 years old, and I remember the shootings of young Black men when I was in high school, like Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, and even the choking of Eric Gardner, I decided to use my education as a tool, as Nelson Mandela said, to make a change, right? And so I began to read very intensely, and I just tried my best to define what career path that I want after high school. And it was a general idea of justice, the idea of creating a society that's more just, irrespective of one's race or gender, sexual orientation, or whether or not they were disabled, were able to be heard within our society. So I began working with Reverend Sharpton, and I began doing community work, dedicating myself to hearing the voices of people and make sure my grades were as high as I possibly could get them so I can go to a school that allowed me to do that. And the place that I really thought where I can achieve that is at Morehouse College.
So Morehouse is a Black male institution.
Yeah.
We have politics and the political landscape happening in America right now. How does politics impact Black men? You talked about Eric Gardner, you talked about the shootings of Black men. What's the impact of politics on Black men?
I think about it being larger. Of course, it uniquely has a big impact upon Black men, but the conversations extend towards Black women as well, right? And how people who are not deemed to be wealthy are unheard within our society. If you're looking at the new criminal reform bill that was passed by the Senate a couple of days ago, we are just now recognizing that women should not be shackled while they're pregnant. Politics has been a thing, man, where it has been used to, when people are not active and they're not engaged, has been used as a tool to perpetuate oppression. However, it doesn't need to be like that. It's a very malleable device. When people get in and try their best to bend the arc of the universe towards justice, what happens is we see massive changes, such as, for example, the creation of Social Security, right? We see mass changes such as the creation of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. Or
why do you care, Julian? Why do you care about all of this if it's not even impacting you and not necessarily impacting?
But it did impact me and it still does. But when I was younger, my mother's from Honduras and my dad's from Jamaica. And some of my cousins are actually undocumented. And they would stay in our apartments while they were trying to go out there and look for work. And, you know, hearing my tia's story, as she was living in the shadows as an undocumented person and her being sexually harassed by her employer. But she had a fear of going out there and telling somebody because she didn't want to be deported. Or my primo, Hector, getting in a situation where, you know, Trump said, for example, people are coming to this country are rapists and murderers. My cousin, when he was in Honduras, had a heart issue. And the medicine that he could get from Honduras was too expensive. The only way that he could live a good life and a healthy life was by making that little journey, making that big journey, making that dangerous journey.
Yeah.
And so I care because these people are a lot of time my own family. And my parents, for example, were wonderful and loving, but I saw the ways in which class caused people to be voiceless. And a lot of times that was my own family. Yeah.
So tell me, what can we do on the ground, even if we aren't directly involved in politics?
When you say directly involved, what do you mean?
We're not you, we're not starting New Deal Democrats, we're not running for mayor, we're not running for council. And so if we aren't into the politics, as we think about it directly, what can we be doing?
I think people should always recognize the fact that their lives are directly involved in politics and they don't need to create organizations or get into elected office to do so. However, I greatly encourage them to do so. I think that if we're looking at, for example, the election of Ocasio-Cortez as a congresswoman who's a Latina and she's 29 years old, I think we have to recognize that every person, if they feel like they can do it, they can. You know, if you're a citizen and you have an issue that you want to get risen and people aren't listening to you, challenge them, take their seats from them. Or continue to give back, right? Go to those high schools, talk to kids about what's going on, talk to kids about the strength that they have within themselves, like what you do, right? And motivate them to want to get out and then come right back in to improve the community.
I hear loud and clear what you're saying about don't just leave the community, but go and bring something back to the community. And I think that's in large what you're doing with some of your work in the West End. And I'm hoping that you come back to New York and bring some of that work here.
I think it's the greatest form of displaying your humanity is by leaving human beings, humanity in a better situation than when you came in.
I'm going to say a few statements to you, and I want you to end them in the way that feels most natural and visceral for you.
Okay, cool.
I am.
Love.
Politics is.
Love. Good politics is love.
My responsibility is.
To create a justice system that's based upon love.
I have the audacity to.
Dream in love. Dream about love.
Julian, it's such a pleasure having you on this
thank
show.
you. I love
such
being
a
here.
Pleasure.
It was nice.
And thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the work that you're doing in our communities and for being committed to making this world a better place and leaving it better than you found it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. And thank you for tuning in to the Audacity Show. I am your host, Mia Dunlap. We can't wait to see you next week.